With that said, as always, this week we've got something to talk about. One of the most common questions that I see posted on all the forums throughout the internet wrestling community is, what does Impact need to do to get to the next level? I will regularly answer these posts and questions with a simple one-word answer: nothing. Why? Because Impact Wrestling currently is doing better than they have ever done. I'm aware of just how bold of a statement that is. I know there are a lot of you already fuming and thinking I have to be absolutely ridiculous for thinking this, let alone saying it. But first, let me start with my background with Impact. With the exception of the first few months of the weekly pay-per-views that were not available here in Canada, and then from the Grand Championship era until this time last year, with those exceptions, I have watched Impact every week. I know you all have multiple examples queued up to prove me wrong, but let me talk about these points first, because as an Impact Wrestling fan, I am well aware of all of them. Ratings. Ratings, ratings, ratings. Wrestling fans are obsessed with using the United States viewership numbers to determine the level a promotion is. Do they matter? To some degree, yes. But we have to remember something. Those are US numbers. So the only people they matter to are the network and the advertisers. Why do ratings matter to a network? First, because of a previously mentioned thing about advertisers, as that is their bread and butter for a network. But also to know where shows rank on their network, to know who to focus the attention to, like who to advertise on what shows and whatnot. Now, 2 million viewers on Fox is good, but not great. And less than a third of what the shows get on Fox at 6 to 7 million viewers. You gotta think that's a third of what these top shows are getting. Scripted shows on the USA Network that gets numbers at and below Raw's current numbers tend to get canceled. Now, obviously, their strong partnership is a factor in their position. Networks almost always have expectations. This is why AEW is sitting pretty, because their ratings were already better than what were expected by TNT, and with NXT out of the way, they are able to now exceed those expectations for TNT. A network doesn't get a wrestling show because they want to beat another network's wrestling show. That is how wrestling fans think, not global media companies. They pick up a wrestling show because they feel it can add something to the portfolio, to the advertisers. That's it. When it comes to Impact, first, they are not only one, if not the top viewed show on most of Anthem's shows that it airs on, like Access and the Fight Network. But they are owned by the same company that owns their network. So getting 10% of what Raw gets doesn't matter. If you watch shows only based on what ratings they are getting, you are doing it wrong. Impact has been on Fox Sports Net, YouTube, BitTorrent, Spike, Pop, Destination America, and now Access. They have never had the security in their show's home like they do today. This allows for Impact to do a lot of things they wouldn't be able to do in previous years. Which brings us to the next point. Creative. People like to talk about how garbage the Impact product is right now, or mud show, or whatever insult Corny is using this week. Let's get one thing straight. If we looked hard enough, we would find fault in every single show out there today. Some may find more fault in one show compared to others. And that comes down to the magic phrase of the week: personal preference. Anyone who has ever asked me if they should watch Impact Wrestling will tell you all the exact same thing. And that is that I have told them that is not for everyone. I mean that. And that is not a put down. It just means they try a different style of storytelling. Not wrong or bad, but different. Yes, Wrestle House was weird at times, but that is the charm of it. Just as Swingers Palace is. The Diener compound. Until the Broken Universe began, Impact was more worried about trying to be or beat WWE than to try things like those things that we just mentioned. When you're trying to be number one and beat your competition, you are generally too afraid to take the big of risks that are needed. How many creative changes did TNA have that they had to go through in that time? You had Cornette, you had Russo, you had Jarrett, Gilberti, Bischoff, Carter, Hogan, Corgan, Pritchard. The list goes on and on. D'Amore and Callis are from a time at the beginning of TNA, as well as having great minds, and now have the trust of ownership that they allows them to take the risk like never before while honoring what has come before them. And because of the creative continuity, they have been able to pay off these wacky bits. Wrestle House was still telling or having stories being resolved 6 months later. Very few companies are able to continue a story that long and have it keep paying off in different ways and let it evolve. So let's start and stop. So the start and stop booking that they had is gone. And they now have faith in their position and ideas, so they don't have to do that stop and start booking like before. Sure, we've had a future Hall of Fame caliber roster for about 10 years before, but that will bring me to the next point: the wrestling. Even with the attempt to be the reborn NWA with dying WCW creative for the first few months of their existence, they still had amazing wrestlers with the X Division putting on amazing matches. But try to tell me when they didn't have great wrestling. Have you watched an Impact Plus special or pay-per-view in the last year that didn't have at least 2 great matches on it that made the show worth the money you paid? There was not one bad match, in my opinion, on Rebellion, with every match being good or better. That's hard for any company to pull off in 2021. Is there some bad? Yeah, for sure. But again, show me any company that doesn't have a fault or some faults in a match here and there. No one can be a big enough mark for New Japan Pro Wrestling to tell me that they've never had a bad match. Did we have Daniels versus Joe versus Styles at one point? Yeah, of course. But Impact has always had the talent to put on 5-star matches. It just depends on who is watching the match, whether they get them or not. Go watch the story that Sami Callihan and Trey Miguel told in their match at Rebellion. You want P.D. Williams, Jay Lethal, and Austin Aries? Well, now you've got Ace Austin, TJP, and Josh Alexander. Let's not forget the veterans on the roster who are actually there to help the younger talent. Remember when we had those X Division guys lighting it up? Well, we had veterans. We had a lot of veterans that, at face value, appeared to come in for more of a paycheck than helping the younger talent back then. Thankfully, it is that younger talent from then that is now being the veterans, giving this generation such a bigger advantage over the generation Sabin, EY, and James Storm came from. While you may say there are times when TNA, Impact, whatever, was better because of these one reason or the other, I just show why across the board they are in the best position they have been in and have the brightest future at this point. They are partnered with a promotion loaded with talent, a company whose champion is currently also the champion for Impact. Regardless of what fans think about this relationship, every episode that Kenny Omega, arguably one of the biggest names in professional wrestling today, is on Impact, it is a benefit to Impact. We are supposed to hate him. We are supposed to hate his character. People said they didn't want him to win the titles because it would take the belt away. Those people have now been proven wrong. So in the end, it comes down to one thing. Say it with me. Personal preference. Yes, you may not like Impact Wrestling right now compared to where they were at some time in the past. What we like is not the Bible on what is and is not good professional wrestling. Your background, your experience, or your education in the industry in no way changes what wrestling is. Now, someone let Jim Cornette know that. So now you tell me why you disagree with me. Also, let me know at what point you think TNA Impact was at its peak if you do not agree that it is currently at its peak. If you appreciate this discussion, the discussion this has created, whether you agree with our position or not, we'd love if you could like the video and share the video with others. We want to hear from all of you and all of your perspectives.